My Lords, first oral question, Baroness Hayman of Ulloch.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the Government welcomes this robust regulatory response from Ofwat, where water companies are underperforming. It provides a great example of strong environmental and economic regulatory frameworks in action. The penalties to these 11 water companies were the result of missed performance commitments on areas such as water supply interruptions, pollution incidents, and internal sewer flooding. The Government will continue to work with regulators to hold companies to account on their environmental and other commitments.
My Lords, the Minister just mentioned that the 11 companies fined by Ofwat missed targets in a number of areas: water supply interruptions, pollution, internal sewer flooding. But the problem is these performance commitments do not set the bar particularly high, which makes it extremely worrying that so many companies are falling short, and some by a considerable distance. So can I ask the Noble Lord the Minister, does he believe that the current sanction, which sees failing companies having to repay customers a proportion of their bills in future years, is enough to bring about the improvements we so desperately need to see? And with this in mind, how would the Noble Lord respond to the suggestion by Ofwat's newly appointed chair, Ian Coucher, that the regulator should be granted powers to debar the directors of egregious water companies?
Well, I take what she says about the level that these sanctions are set at, and if she thinks that there are areas that they can be improved on, we will work with Ofwat to do that. But she talks about this as if it's the only area of enforcement, and enormous fines have been applied to water companies where they have failed to achieve the environmental standards and where they have illegally pumped sewage into rivers, resulting in enormous fines which have had dramatic impact on the amounts of dividends that they have been able to award.
My Lords, will my noble friend give an estimate to the House of the contribution, in his view, that 300,000 new houses being built are contributing to the problem? When are we going to have an end to the automatic right to connect, so that we will have antiquated antediluvian pipes replaced by modern pipes that can actually take the sewage from these new houses?
Enormous amounts of money have been spent on new water infrastructure, but sewage companies are responsible for the maintenance and resilience of drainage and wastewater networks, and to address current and future pressure on drainage networks, we are making drainage and wastewater management plans statutory through the Environment Act, so they will be consulted, and they have to put these forward as a legal measure in order to make sure that they are taking into account the pressure of new housing.
Is the Minister aware of some analysis done by the Rivers Trust which shows that the monitoring of our rivers by the Environment Agency is much reduced in recent years? Probably, they say, they don't have the resource. Could the Minister consider either adding to their resources or at least redirecting their priorities?
We have put more money into the Environment Agency, and they've been recruiting more enforcement officers to do precisely that. We're also working with citizen science, and I pay tribute to river trusts and others who are providing people to assist the Environment Agency in assessing the quality of river water.
As someone who lives in an area which is likely to see a reduction in water bills due to penalties from Ofwat, I would prefer our rivers, waterways and seas to be sewage-free rather than receive a small monetary handout. It appears that the threat of financial penalties is insufficient to encourage water companies to change their damaging environmental practices. Is the Government ready to propose more stringent means to ensure water companies invest in infrastructure rather than directors' bonuses?
We are seeing precisely that, a £56 billion investment in infrastructure, the biggest investment in real terms that this industry has ever seen. And since 2015, further to the question that the Noble Duke asked, The Environment Agency has brought 54 prosecutions against water companies, securing fines of almost £140 million. In 2022, the EA had already concluded 6 prosecutions with fines of over £2.4 million. So not only are we seeing more investment, we are seeing more enforcement, and we will see an improvement, and the government will insist on an improvement in the releases of sewage into rivers.
My Lords, Norfolk is fortunate to have a number of really quite remarkable chalk streams, which are providers of really quite spectacularly important habitat. What more can be done to protect these chalk streams?
My noble friend raises a very important point. The chalk streams strategy, written by somebody who I suspect was a former constituent of my noble friend, Charles Rangeley Wilson, is a brilliant piece of work which the government has accepted and will form the basis of our policies to see these very valuable environmental and ecological systems in pristine state as quickly as possible.
The noble Lord the Minister talked about the enormous fines that were able to be given to the water companies, but as Ofwat had already admitted, they're only able to fine up to 10% of the turnover of these water companies, and what Ofwat said was that that was a very small percentage of the total value of those companies because they are so asset rich. So can I ask the Minister once again to look again at what those limits are in terms of the fines that can be passed on to the water companies, because they're clearly not working at the current time.
Well, I'm very pleased to make the noble Baroness's day by saying that we have increased a thousandfold from £250,000 to £250 million, the upper limit on which water companies can be fined.
No means has given consideration to changing the building regulations, particularly with regard to rainwater runoff, so that the water is recycled and not taken into the system, and thus reducing the volume going out of the system.
My noble friend's absolutely right to raise this. One of the problems we have is that water coming off roofs and driveways, absolutely clean water, goes into the same sewage system. To separate them, to separate foul water from clean water, has been estimated costing between 350 to 600 billion pounds, which would have a dramatic effect on people's bills. But that is nothing to stop us trying to do this with new housing, as well as retrofitting it into existing housing, and ongoing discussions are happening with other government departments to see if this can happen.
By no means wanting to excuse the water companies anything, if certainly in the west of England a lot of river pollution does come from industrial food farming, particularly chickens and particularly nitrates. What's the government doing to fine them for their contribution to our rivers, our pollution in our rivers?
The noble Baroness raises a very severe problem, and we rightly hold water companies to account, but this is only part of the problem. On rivers such as the Wye, phosphates from the poultry industry have caused that river to become, in parts of it, at certain times of the year, practically ecologically dead. And this is one of the great rivers of our country. And we have to recognise that there is a planning issue alongside the way we support and incentivise farmers, the way we enforce these issues, which all has to be brought together. And we all want to see more food security, free-range eggs and broiler houses and all the rest of it. Those are the sort of things we want to see more of in this country, but not at a price that we are now paying in rivers like the Wye.
What is the government going to do when it's brought it together?
Well, I refer the noble Lord to the Environment Act as a first measure, probably the most significant piece of environmental legislation that any country has brought forward. And this brings with it controls and sanctions, alongside it new statutory policy statement to Ofwat to give them more powers, higher enforcement fines, and many of the other things I've already discussed this afternoon. So I hope, can see on reflection that there is a plan, that we are determined to end the shameful situation of illegal outflows into rivers, whether it's from sewage or whether it's illegal pollution coming from farmland as well.
of us who watch this situation closely actually don't think that Ofwat is doing a very good job. And a case in point is that they did fine Thames Water £50 million, which was great, but Thames Water is now giving each of its customers £3.40 as a sort of recompense. Does that sound reasonable? Does it sound fair?
As part of this failure to hit their commitments, Thames Water will be returning to customers next year £51 million, which, as an average household water bill, to take all the fresh water into a household and remove all the dirty water is just over £1 a day. That's a lot of money for someone on low income, but in terms of household incomes, it probably sits well below, for example, their energy costs. But this system of being able to return money to customers is absolutely at the heart of the kind of incentives we want to see.